It may not look like it anymore, but countries still invade one another. Ethiopia invaded Somalia in 2006 to stop Islamist terrorists from taking over the government. Israel invaded Lebanon that same year to stop Hezbollah rocket attacks. America invaded Iraq because of the perceived threat of weapons of mass destruction. The world's most recent invasions weren't really conducted with the idea of actually annexing countries. Well, not lately, anyway. There are many other powder kegs out there: India versus Pakistan, Iran versus Saudi Arabia, or China versus all of its neighbors. But the Korean Peninsula is still the most volatile country versus country situation, given the almost 70 years of animosity, the constant state of war. There was never a real end of the war, only an armistice, and North Korea pulled out of that in 2013, and the continued acts of violence between the two. The threat of widespread destruction is the deterrent that keeps the conflict from boiling over. It's important to remember that the 1950 to 1953 Korean War was a disaster for both sides, and that fact is largely what drives North Korean military policy. It's what keeps the people supporting the regime through animosity toward the US and South Korea. Over a period of 3 years or so, we killed off, 20% of the population. Air Force General Curtis LeMay, head of the Strategic Air Command during the Korean War, told the Office of Air Force History in 1984. Dean Rusk, a U.S. Secretary of State under Presidents Kennedy and Johnson, said the United States bombed everything that moved in North Korea, every brick standing on top of another. North Koreans either remember the war firsthand or through the stories from their grandparents. Fighting between North and South Korean forces was particularly brutal, and as a result, there is no reason to believe either side would pull punches today. Both countries have significant military power. South Korea has one of the most powerful militaries in the world, with 3.5 million troops. North Korea has 5 million troops with another 5 million that can fight in a protracted war. The North Korean Songun policy means the military comes first in terms of food, fuel, and other materials before any are given to the population at large. Mandatory conscription, for a 10-year enlistment, means that most North Koreans have some form of military experience. The North also boasts 605 combat aircraft and 43 naval missile boats, but the North Korean People's Air Force's most numerous fighter is the subsonic MiG-21, which debuted in 1953. The latest model is the MiG-29, from the 1970s, and they're all armed with Vietnam War-era weapons. So in terms of military technology, North Korea pales in comparison to the South. South Korea is one of the most technologically advanced countries in the world. The South's GDP is 50 times as great as the North's, and it spends almost 5 times as much as North Korea on defense. Since it can't keep up in traditional combat arms, the North is beefing up its unconventional warfare capabilities, including chemical and nuclear weapons, along with the ballistic missiles to deliver them. It can't deliver the weapons by air because their antiquated air forces would be easy pickings for the US F-22 Raptor squadron on the peninsula. The North is also hampered in terms of alliances. During the Korean War, the Korean Communists were pushed all the way to the Yalu River by General Douglas MacArthur. It was only after the Chinese intervened with massive manpower and materiel that the Communists were able to form any kind of counterattack. Chinese intervention for the North is questionable at best, given its extensive overseas economic ties. In fact, it might even be in China's best interest to invade North Korea itself, to give a buffer zone between China and a collapsed North Korean government, or worse, US troops right on the border. South Korea maintains a tight alliance with the United States, which has 30,000 troops of its own stationed there, 3,800 in Japan, and 5,700 on Guam, along with significant air and naval forces in the region. A North Korean attack on the South would give the North a slight advantage in surprise and initiative, for a few days. Allied forces would respond instantly, but the North would still have the initiative. Retired Army General James Marks estimates it would have the initiative for 4 days at most. When the first war was launched across the demilitarized zone, the DMZ wasn't quite as defended as it is today. No one was expecting the attack, and the bulk of US forces had been withdrawn to Japan. Today, an assault across the 38th parallel, the north-south border, is tantamount to slow, grinding, probably explosive death. North Korea would open with artillery and rocket fire from positions on the north slopes of the mountains just across the border. The North is the world's largest artillery force, with 10,000 pieces in its arsenal. The bulk of these forces are,